Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, as we greet you from the studios of the Islamic Broadcasting Network here in my native island of Trinidad in the Caribbean, with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are responding to questions which were posed at my all-day seminar on Dajjal, which was held in the British city of Birmingham on December the 16th. It's a huge pile of questions, huge pile here. We have answered some questions already, and we still have a large number left to answer. I promised that I would answer them questions. So let us begin now with Allah's blessed name. And this question pertains to money and the economy, Dajjal. Can you kindly explain what's happening with Brexit and the economic destruction by Dajjal? Brexit is the British vote to exit, to leave the European community. I think it's supposed to be finalized by the month of March, perhaps, and when eventually Britain will no longer be a member of the European community. I have competence to answer only one part of the question, and that pertaining to money. The rest about the trade and development and so on, you have to find someone else who will be able to explain the implications for Britain and for the European community. My link, the link that I see with Dajjal is that when I spoke about the shadow in the Quran, in which surah? Can you remember? Suratul Mursalat, where Allah says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ إِن تَلِكُوا إِلَى ذِلٍّ ذِي ثَلَاثِ شُعَبٍ. That there is a shadow which is going to come upon the world, and this shadow will have three parts. When the three parts are all exhausted, the shadow will disappear and Dajjal will appear in person. This is an interpretation of the verse. It may never have been interpreted like this before. This is maybe the first time, and I may be the first to do it, but never mind. Once you interpret the Quran, you must remember only Allah can confirm that an interpretation is correct, so we say Allah knows best. When we looked at the first stage of the shadow, we saw Pax Britannica. And in Pax Britannica, Britain was able to establish her rule in the world because of control over money. This is one of the most important parts, not the military part, the economic part, monetary part, with the Bank of England being established in 1697 perhaps, and the Bank of England then starting issuing paper money. And then came the second part of the shadow, where the sterling pound is replaced by the US dollar and Pax Americana. And in that second stage you also have the final part when the US dollar became a petrodollar, which is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, the petrodollar. And now we say, in order for Pax Judaica to replace Pax America, this is their plan, not mine, their plan. I'm just telling you what is their plan. That there has to be a change in the monetary system, and we're already seeing the beginnings of that change now in the monetary system with the emergence of electronic money and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and so on. These new currencies are not issued by governments. So this is a deliberate effort being made to undermine the currencies which are established by governments, so that eventually you could bring about a collapse of all paper money, and then eventually they'll be replaced by one currency for all of mankind. But this will be after the Great War, when most of mankind will perish and only the rump will be left. And in that small part of mankind which will be left after the Great War, I think North America will be gone. there won't be any people living in North America. If they are living in North America, they'll be surviving like in a primitive age, because North America will be finished with nuclear weapons. Yeah. Same thing for Europe. Same thing for Europe. Yeah. So what is left of the world after the Great War would be a world in which, a small world in which one currency will be used by all of mankind. So not only do you have to bring about the demolition of the US dollar, but also the demolition of the euro. And my reading, and I can be wrong, my reading is that the British choice to exit from the European community is the beginning of the process of undermining the euro, so that eventually the euro and the sterling pound will be destabilized. What is the importance for women? What is the important role of women in the last age? Let me take a drink of water, please. Our Prophet ﷺ spoke extensively about the last age. He got a lot of knowledge concerning the last age when he made the Isra and Miraj. And Allah showed him, لَقَدْ رَأَى مِنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِ الْكُبْرَى, the Quran says. He saw many, many signs. He was able to look into Jahannam, the hellfire. And he said that he saw that the majority of those in Jahannam were women, meaning that in the last age, huge numbers of women are going to be in the hellfire. And the link with Dajjal is very plain and clear. Because he said the last people to come out of Dajjal will be women. And so, excuse me, if you are a woman, it is even more important for you to study the subject of Dajjal than the men. Because Dajjal is going to target women more than men in Akhir Zaman. One of the ways in which Dajjal targets women in Akhir Zaman, the Prophet said, women will be dressed and yet naked. So when you see the woman coming out half naked and three-quarter naked and with body paint, it's time to separate yourself from these people. That is what you must do as a woman. If you can talk to them and if you can correct them, fine, alhamdulillah. But when they are beyond that, they don't want to be corrected, they want you to become naked like them, you should separate yourself from them. Even if it's your own daughter, yes, separate yourself from them in order to protect yourself. Number two, he said that the majority of children to be born would be born out of wedlock, meaning as bastard children, illegitimate children, meaning sexual relations outside of marriage will become commonplace. When you see women behaving like that, not just men, women behaving like that, engaging in sexual relations outside of marriage, and you cannot correct them, you have to separate yourself from such women. There is a very important passage of the Quran in Surah Al-A'raf. This is your homework now. You go to verses 163 perhaps until 168, and there you see where Allah cursed the people and He said to them, Kunu kiradatan khasi'in. That's your homework. Be apes despised. So go and study that portion of the Quran. Which surah? Surah Al-A'raf. And you'll understand what's happening in the world today, where people are showing a preference for public nudity, being naked in public. And people are showing a preference now for what should be the bedroom life. They take the bedroom life and they put it in the public. That's right. And this is proliferating in the world today. Women in particular have to be very careful, because this is coming from Dajjal, and Dajjal is using women as the last people who come out to him to try to corrupt and destroy mankind. Could Allah be saying be apes have any kind of connection to do with the pride of the West promoting the theory of evolution? No, this is not human beings being transformed into apes. No. A human being cannot be transformed into an ape. Not at all. Not according to the Quran. Why not? When you go to the commentaries of the Quran, you'll find so many of them saying that a number of human beings who were Jews were converted, were transformed into apes. But in fact, the Quran is not talking about Jews. The Quran is talking about Christians. Yes, not Jews. They've not studied the Quran properly to make these kind of comments in the tafsir. When Allah created the human being, He says, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. I breathed into the human being of my ruh. وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. From my ruh I breathed into them. And so the human being has a ruh, which is for only the human being. In consequence of that ruh or that spirit, the human being cannot only see with the external eye, he can also see with the internal eye. And when he does not see with the internal eye, Allah says about them, they have eyes and yet cannot see. He said, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. They're just like cattle. I gave them internal sight, but they are blind internally. They're just like cattle. So this is what Allah has given to a human being. In consequence of this, a human being can speak. Animals don't speak. Animals don't read books. Animals don't write books. Animals don't think the way human beings think. Animals don't have a rational faculty. Shall I continue and continue and continue? This is the difference between a human being and an animal. So if Allah were to transform a human being into an animal, what's going to happen with the ruh? Did you think about that? That ruh has to remain because he has to answer on Judgment Day for his conduct. So why does the monkey not talk like a human being? Huh? Why does the monkey not also write books? Why does the monkey not have a rational intellect and participate in the scientific revolution? Why? No monkey has ever done that. No. No, Allah has not transformed any human being into apes, into monkeys. Not at all. What the Quran is saying is something else. It's saying that these human beings who, instead of living the way of life of human beings, will now live the way of life of apes. And this is a despicable way of life for them, not for the apes. The apes they don't put on clothes, they're naked. So these human beings are going to show a preference for public nudity. Should I continue? This is the explanation of the main verse. When my book, Constantinople in the Quran is going to be on my website soon, within the next 2 weeks or so. In that book, you will read my explanation about this B8, this spy. Next question, when do you think that the Mahdi will arrive? The Prophet ﷺ has given a timeline of events that will occur. And in this timeline, he said, number one is Jerusalem. That when you see Jerusalem reaching center stage in the world, playing a central position in the world affairs, you know this is the first sign. Then after that, he said, look to Medina, Yathrib, and it'll have no role whatsoever, which is where we are now. The next event, he says, to come after that will be the Great War. That's where we are today. And guess what we're doing? Instead of preparing for the Great War, studying the subject, we eat our biryani and go home and sleep. That's what we do, including our Maulanas. Nobody goes on the mimbar to talk about the Great War. Nobody. I don't know why. The next event after the Great War will be the conquest of Constantinople. And my book has treated with this subject. Constantinople in the Quran. Please wait for it. It's going to be on my website soon. The next event after the conquest of Constantinople, he said, will be the Khuruj of Dajjal. My view is that it is only when Dajjal appears in person, in human form, only then would Allah send Imam al-Mahdi. The Great War has not yet taken place. When will it take place? I don't know, but it's going to be soon. Only after the Great War takes place will you have the conquest of Constantinople. The Prophet said there are two hadiths. The first one is that between the Great War and the appearance of Dajjal will be a period of time lasting only 7 months. The second hadith from Abu Dawud is saying not 7 months, 7 years. And Abu Dawud himself comments, he said, this is a stronger view, 7 years. Therefore, as soon as the Great War takes place, it's going to be a very brief period of time before Dajjal appears in person. Brief period of time, 7 years. And then, of course, Imam al-Mahdi. So we may not have much time left before Imam al-Mahdi emerges in person. Bismillah. Sheikh, just as the United States intervened in World War I, as power was transferred from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana, will there be a similar intervention on the part of Israel on the side of the USA and thus announcing its ominous destiny? The Great War that is coming is going to be used to bring about the transition from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica. When will the Great War take place? And how will it commence? I don't think you need a PhD to understand. I hope the American people are listening to me and the American Armed Forces. That Israel is certainly going to play the most important, significant role in pulling the trigger for when the Great War takes place. Israel cannot allow that Great War to take place by chance. No, it has to take place at the time that Israel decides it should take place. And I don't think that Israel can risk the Great War taking place so long as Donald Trump is President of the United States of America. So between now, and I have to choose my words now with great care, so between now and 2020, when the next American elections take place, either that Mr. Trump will pass away, by whatever means, another Kennedy passing away, or that he'd have to be removed as president, what's it called, to remove the president. The Congress has to vote for it, and Pence will take over. If this does not happen between now and 2020, then there is the possibility that he can be re-elected as president, which means pushing the Great War back even further. They can't wait that long. So there are very interesting times ahead between now and 2020, next year. Is the promotion of lesbianism and homosexuality footprints of Dajjal? Most certainly. Most certainly. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that men will dress like women. A man will dress as a woman, firstly, because he wants to attract another man, which is homosexuality. And a man dressing as a woman would indicate also that men will abandon their functional role of men in society of maintaining women and children. We already see this in France happening. So many men now, they put their wives to go to work and they stay home. And they go in the casino and they're drinking and they're using drugs and so on. And the wife has to go to work and she has to bring the income to pay the rent for the apartment and bring the food and so on. I saw it myself. This is men abandoning their functional role as men in society. But the other meaning is men dressing as women to attract another man, homosexuality. And this is something that Allah destroyed in the past. And when He destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, He said, I'm leaving behind me a sign for those who come after you, that if they return to Sodom and Gomorrah, to homosexuality, Allah will will punish them again. Is the division of Sunni and Shia the work of Dajjal? There is absolutely no doubt whatsoever in my mind that Dajjal intervened in the early stage of our history to bring about this division, in order that in Akhirul Zaman he may play his trump card, and that is to bring about Sunni Shia civil war in the world of Islam. It is not possible to reconcile this Sunni Shia division. No, it's not possible. What we can do is to teach proper methodology, and that is that the Quran is the final arbiter of all differences between us. And if the Shia insist on this theory of the Imamat, and that is that it is Allah, this is what they say, that it is Allah who ordained that Nabi Muhammad ﷺ should be succeeded by his cousin Ali radiallahu ta'ala. This is Allah's decision. And number two, that Allah has further decided that succession after Ali radiallahu ta'ala must be confined to Ahlul Bayt. If the Shia says that Allah has ordained this, let me repeat myself, and please listen carefully to my words, so there is no misunderstanding. Are you listening in Iran? If a Shia declares that Allah has ordained, He has ordained that succession to leadership of the Ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is confined to Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet. And it began with Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. If this is from Allah, then the fasting in the month of Ramadan is also from Allah. And if I were to say I reject fasting in the month of Ramadan, can I still be a Muslim? I invite you to think. I invite you to show intellectual integrity. There's no way you can run away from this. No. Once Allah had determined something, you have to submit to it to be in Islam. And if you reject it, you are not a Muslim, you're kafir. Shall I repeat it? When will you understand? When will you think? If you continue to declare, as the Shia do, that it is Allah who has ordained that succession to leadership of this ummah is confined to the family of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And if Imran Hosein declares, as I do now, reject this, I reject it, I say no, I reject it, then am I still a Muslim? Will you not think? Will you not show integrity? The answer is, if I reject it, I'm not a Muslim, I'm a kafir. You cannot get away from that. You cannot get away from that. Once you say, Allah has ordained it, if I reject it, I'm a kafir. So the entire world of Sunni Islam, all of us who reject this, we are all kuffar. And if I'm a kafir, you cannot treat me as a brother Muslim. Shall I continue? Let's go to another question. What happens if we want to purchase a property and we are unable to do so without a mortgage? Don't buy the property if you cannot purchase it. If you don't have the money to do it, don't buy it. Is there any way you can buy a house without borrowing money on interest? I have a book, The Prohibition of Riba in the Quran and Sunnah, which is on my website. At the end of the book, there are questions, frequently asked questions. And in that section of questions answered, there is a method: how can you buy a house, how can you buy a car, how can you buy something if you do not have enough cash to buy it? And that is it. You get someone else who will join with you in a partnership. And you have a part ownership and he has part ownership and so on. Please go to that book and it will explain to you. How can you explain in the economy that money lenders don't have the risk? In fact, they have the risk if the person does not pay except for credit on gauge. How doesn't wealth circulate because of riba? A business transaction, if you will pause and think for just a little bit. A business transaction is one in which you can make a profit or you can suffer a loss. When you embrace risk, R-I-S-K, and you can either make a profit or you can suffer a loss, only then can Allah intervene. And Allah can then take from some and give to others. This is distribution and redistribution of wealth in the society, so that the rich will not remain permanently rich and the poor will not remain imprisoned in permanent poverty. Islam does not want an economy in which wealth does not circulate through the economy. No. Islam wants an economy in which wealth will circulate through the economy so that the rich will not remain permanently rich and the poor will not remain permanently poor. When money is lent on interest, there is no risk of this sort involved. No. Because the money lender doesn't have a chance of making a profit or suffering a loss. No. The money lender lends his money and you have a legal obligation to repay the money. And if you do not repay the money, he can take you to court. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Because of this system of lending money on interest all around the world today, the poor have remained permanently poor. The rich of the world have remained permanently rich, and the poor of the world remain permanently poor. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan, from the day it was born to this day, has had an economy in which wealth has not circulated through the economy. No. The rich of Pakistan have remained rich from day one to this day, and the poor of Pakistan have remained poor, the masses, except for few individuals who travel abroad and so on and be able to change their fortunes. But by and large, the economy remains like this, with wealth not circulating through the economy. This is oppression. This is oppression. And it is because of money being lent on interest. When you stop the banks from lending money on interest. You stop the money lender from lending money on interest. Block it. And if you lend money on interest, you have no legal right to the return of your capital sum. No. When you lend money on interest and he refuses to repay you, you can't go to the court. No. Court is not going to accept this contract as a valid contract. No. Then what's going to happen is that Allah can now intervene and take from some and give to others. And so Allah will redistribute wealth in an economy. This is not going to happen So long as modern Western civilization has the military power it has in the world, and so long as we Muslims are led by people who don't know the Quran. How do we respond to someone who says that although riba is haram, it is beneficial to take a loan in order to invest in the country, in order to pay off the country's debt? It is beneficial to take a loan on interest for this reason or that reason or that reason. Okay? What is the answer from Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam? Pakistan has decided to take loans from Saudi Arabia. This is the new Imran Khan government. Take loans from China, take loans from UAE, and also the possibility of a loan from the IMF. That's what they said. They've not ruled out this. Well, if your loans are interest-free, fine, no problem. An interest-free loan. But will Saudi Arabia give you an interest-free loan? No. If Saudi Arabia gives an interest-free loan, the United States will be very angry with Saudi Arabia. No. The IMF will not give you an interest-free loan. No. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam cursed. This is not obscene language, this is religious cursing. He cursed all four of them, and he said they're all equally guilty. Number one, the one who takes riba. He put his money in a fixed deposit, and he's taking the interest. Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam cursed him. He cursed the one who gives riba. He borrowed money on interest to build a house, to buy a car, to pay off debts. And he now has to repay the loan with interest. Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam cursed him. He also cursed the one who records the transaction and the two witnesses. And he said they are all equally guilty. If you die with the curse of a prophet upon you, then there is no way you can escape from the hellfire. So whatever be the reason for which you are borrowing money on interest, you still have the curse of the prophet upon you. What is your opinion of Anwar al-Awlaki, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on his soul? Our brother, our learned brother, was a great scholar of Islam. We respect him, we honor him, and we are proud. We are proud that he stood up, alhamdulillah, in the way that he did, which caused them to kill him. Yeah. May Allah bless him with Jannah. Which are the countries which will be involved in the Great War? On the one side, there will be NATO, and on the other side, there will be Russia and China. These are the main actors in the Great War. But you also have the clients of NATO. As soon as the Great War takes place, begins, one can expect that Israel will immediately act. And Israel will, under the cover of the Great War, will seek to provoke an attack on Pakistan in order to eliminate Pakistan from the nuclear club. Under the cover of the Great War, Israel may also use the opportunity to seek to expand her frontiers to encompass the biblical frontiers from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. So therefore an attack on Egypt. As soon as the Great War starts also, one can expect that Saudi Arabia would continue now even more vigorously to seek to provoke Sunni-Shia civil war in the world of Islam in order to destabilize the house of Islam at a time when Great War is taking place in the world. There are those who are paid mercenaries, armed forces which are there to help you. Just pay us and we'll fight your war for you. Just pay us and we will fight your war for you. As a consequence, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has announced that Pakistan will no longer fight America's wars for America, meaning this is what we were doing in the past. If this is what they were doing in the past, it will be interesting to see whether this will continue in the future as part of the price of a Saudi loan. Is Imam al-Mahdi before or after the Great War? I've already answered this question that in my opinion, unless and until Dajjal appears in person, Allah will not cause the Imam to emerge. And Dajjal will not appear in person until the Great War takes place, and then we have to wait at least about 7 years for Dajjal to appear in person after the Great War. Which book does Russia have? The question of which book does Russia have? Okay, let me take a drink of water. Russia, over the last 10-15 years, has advanced militarily so rapidly and phenomenally that Russia has today become the dominant military power in the world. Oh yes. And there is something in the Quran which explains it. But I have to be brief. When Sulaiman alayhi salam, the Prophet Solomon, learnt about the queen of Saba, and that she had this magnificent throne, and that they worshipped the sun, and she was the ruler, a woman instead of a man. He then sent a letter to her ordering her to submit to him. He's not going to allow this to continue. And she then responded by sending gifts to him. And he said, I don't need your gifts, I'm going to come with my army. He then asked those who are in his court a very strange request. Between Jerusalem and Yemen were 2,000 kilometers. 2,000 kilometers. And he asked, who can bring her throne to me? Number one, you require to be able to travel at lightning speed to go to Yemen and come back. And also you have to be able to transport something huge, a throne, through space and time. Amongst the jinn, there are those who are obliged to work for Sulaiman alayhi salam. Allah has ordered them. They must work for him. And the jinn are of different kind, but the most powerful of the jinn is called the Ifrit. So an Ifrit of the jinn, he said, I can do it for you. And I can bring it for you before you rise from your throne. But the jinn are also working with human beings. A combination of jinn and human beings. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. Allah speaks of an alliance of human beings and jinn. This is what brought modern Western civilization into being. So modern West is able to use the jinn to be able to bring about this revolution in space and time, traveling at lightning speed and bringing objects and sending objects through space at lightning speed, which is what the Ifrit said he can do. And hence you have a scientific and technological revolution coming out in the Western world in which you can now no longer have a sword, you have a gun, you have a rifle, and a bullet can travel at lightning speed. And then you have the missiles traveling at lightning speed. And this is what gave the modern West their military superiority in the world, the military application of the scientific and technological revolution made possible through the Ifrit of the jinn. who have this knowledge. But lo and behold, something else happened, which explains Russia's military dominance today. What is it? Someone in the court who was not a jinn, but who had knowledge of the book, he said, "Oh, I can bring it for you before you can wink your eyes." Meaning, he has access to knowledge pertaining to movement through space and time, which is far superior to that which the jinn have access to. What book is this? Someone who has knowledge of the book. عنده علم الكتاب. It's not the Quran. No, it's not the Injil, it's not the Torah, it's not the Zabur, no. The book that Allah is referring to in this verse of the Quran, it is in Surah An-Naml, is another book of the Quran. Another book, not a book, the Quran in this book. Another book. We do not know the name of the book. No, the Quran does not tell us the name of the book. But in that book there is knowledge pertaining to travel through space and time. That is it. And if you have access to the knowledge which is in that book, you can travel faster, far faster than the jinn can travel, and you can also cause objects to travel through space and time faster than anything that the jinn can possibly do. This is why the Russian missile technology have now made the United States, your aircraft carriers are now obsolete, redundant, because once war breaks out, an aircraft carrier is a sitting duck now. The Russians can destroy it at any time. This is the explanation of what is happening in the world military. And we don't know the name of the book, but the Quran speaks about the book in Surah An-Naml. Someone here speaks about the way we should sit in a public gathering, women and men, and no hijab between them, no partition between them. When we had our seminar in Birmingham, we did not have any barrier, partition, curtain or so on, separating men from women. Is it obligatory for there to be a partition, a barrier, a curtain which separates men from women in a public gathering? No. No. Listen to the hadith of Sahih Muslim. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, excuse me, you will never hear this hadith being quoted by any Maulana in your Salatul Jummah, never. They run away from it. They run away from it. He said, when women go down in sijda, in prostration, who is speaking? Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. When women go down in sijda, they must stay in sijda longer than the men. Why? He said, because some of the men may not have enough cloth to cover themselves properly. Men have to ride camels, they have to ride donkeys, they have to ride horses. So men have to have two pieces of garments, an upper part and a lower part. And the lower part has to be cut in such a way that you can put your foot over an animal, to ride the animal. The lower part, it can't be tight-fitting. You can't ride a horse with a tight-fitting trousers. Yeah? So it has to be something with a lot of room in it so that you can put your foot over a camel or a horse or a donkey. And then you have an upper garment. So the Prophet ﷺ is talking about the upper garment, not the lower one, when he says that men may not have sufficient cloth to cover themselves. Although you are covered by the lower garment, yet modesty demands that the upper garment must be long enough to reach down low enough to cover where the private parts are located. So he said, women must remain in sijda longer than men. So that if a woman raises her head too soon, she is not presented with an unwelcome sight. But this implies that there is no barrier between the woman and the man. That's right, no barrier. There was no shortage of cloth in Medina. They could use palm leaves if they want to put a barrier up, a hijab up, to separate men from women. Answer me, tell me if I'm wrong. There was no barrier in Medina. Answer me if I'm wrong, particularly if you're in Pakistan. Answer me if I'm wrong. Tell me. There was no barrier. He said the best row for the men is the first, and the one with the greatest danger is the last. And the best row for the woman is the last, and the one with the greatest shar is the first. What does it mean? It means, number one, that in the masjid men sit at the front and women behind. That makes sense, that you put the men at the front and the women behind. Not because men are superior to women, but because if you put the woman at the front and the men at the back, no man will be able to concentrate on his prayer because the women are in front of him. That's right. So it makes a lot of sense. So the men in the front and the women at the back. And because when a man goes to the masjid, he goes to the first row, then the second, and the third, and the fourth. When women enter the masjid, they go to the last row, and then the second to last, and this one. So the two will be approaching each other. So the last row of the men and the first row of the women will be close to each other. That's where the shar, the evil, is lurking, because of physical proximity. But all you had to do was to put a partition, build a wall, put a parda, put a curtain. But they did not do that. And so men and women prayed in the same space. But it makes no sense talking about that today, because this ummah has more knowledge and more wisdom and everything than Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. They have abandoned the way of life given by Allah Ta'ala to the Prophet, that in the masjid men and women pray in the same space. And so when the imam is on the mimbar, the woman can see the imam. So you're going to put up a partition now with glass, so you can see, all right. And when the women come into this women's section, they go to the first row, yeah, because you have a screen when the salat has been taking place. What kind of nonsense is this now? So we have no partition in Islam. Men sit at the front, women at the back. But if you try to enforce this today, you're being condemned. Say no, women on one side, men on the other side. You can't fight that anymore. This being the scientific and technological age, what is your view on the interpretation of the Quran being analyzed by some in a scientific manner? By all means, use whatever knowledge there is available in the world, scientific knowledge or whatever knowledge. Use whatever knowledge there is in the world and go search the Quran. You will not find anything in the Quran which can be used as recognized as something false. No. Whatever in the Quran is absolute truth. And whatever knowledge you can have to come to the Quran, use it to be able to understand the Quran. Is it bad to send kids to a nursery? Is it bad to send kids to a nursery? Well, first of all, Uncle Imran believes only goats and Americans have kids. The rest of us have children. So I suppose you're talking about children, not the young of the goat, okay? So is it bad to send children to the nursery? Yes, yes, yes. From the time that the child is born until the time of formal education to commence, about the age of 4, between 4 and 5. The British system is 5. Our system is a little bit before 5. A child at the age of 4, 4 and a half, has immense intelligence. Oh, yes. I taught a class of children, and there was a young boy, 4 years of age, and a young girl, 4. And I was amazed by the intelligence of these two 4-year-olds, yes, particularly the boy. During this period of time, the child must be free to enjoy your childhood. Like a butterfly flying to all the different flowers in the garden. That's a child. The child is not meant to be put into a classroom, into a restricted environment. The child has to have freedom to fly like a butterfly. And if you disturb this period of time, age 1, 2, 3, 4, if you disturb it, you can retard the child's development. One of the greatest gifts I had in my life, yes, is a happy childhood. Growing up as a child. No, my mother did not go to work and my father go to work, and so the child had to be put in a daycare center. No, ask the child. Do you prefer to go to the nursery, the daycare center, or do you prefer to stay with mommy? Ask the child and see what the answer the child will give you. If you do so, you are actually neglecting the child. And when you neglect the child, when that child grows up, then that child will neglect you in turn, because the child will say, we got to go to work. So they take their old father and their old mother and put them in a junkyard for human beings. We are now in a time when women have to work. We are now in a time where women have to work. And men, or rather males, they stay sleeping at home. I just talked about this just now. Do you think that the woman should accept this situation? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If your husband is working, he's trying his best, and this is all the income that he can bring, then you don't have to divorce him for that. You can join with him and try to work. Nabi Muhammad ﷺ's daughter Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha was married to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And they were poor. And he is the head of state, but they were poor. And there's a hadith that Ali and his wife, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and his wife Fatima radiallahu ta'ala, they used to go to cut wood and make it into bundles and bring it on their backs to the market to sell. So husband and wife joined together to try to make ends meet. But if your husband is not doing that, he's not making the effort to work, and he's simply staying home or going to the casino and or doing drugs and so on, and you have to go and work to maintain him, that is oppression. You should not allow that oppression to continue. Next question is womb transplantation Dajjal's fitna. I don't have the competence to talk about, to assess what is womb transplantation, but my learned brother, Professor Dr. Abul Fadl Mohsin Ibrahim, he has expertise in Islamic medical ethics. So whoever sent this question to me, send me an email and I'll put you in contact with my learned brother, Professor Dr. Abul Fadl Mohsin Ibrahim, and he will be able to answer you. In fact, Mohsin and I studied together in Pakistan under Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari. Last question, if family members cannot see the fitna of Dajjal, what is the best way to approach them, to help them to see the deception? And if they still cannot, what do you do? Suggest an approach. Number one, if you're on board a ship and the ship is sinking and you cannot prevent the ship from sinking and your family is on board, can't see that, departing through the night, what do you do? If you remain on board with them, trying to convince them, the ship will sink and all of you will sink. The proper thing to do is to get off the ship. And when you get off the ship, you are safe. Now you make the effort to get your family members to get off the ship. If some of them accept and they come, alhamdulillah, And if the others don't, the ship sinks with them, that's their problem. They're the ones who choose that way. We thank you now for these 2 sessions I've had. Look at the amount still remaining. I think maybe we'll have to organize a 3rd session with these questions, inshallah, to try to finish more questions. And I thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.